Morning came quietly to the fjord. Ciara stood beneath its pale light, no longer bound, but not yet free. She drew water from the village well. The rope creaked, steady in her hands. This land was strange, but it did not reject her. Inside the longhouse, she worked the dough carefully. Flour dust rose in warm firelight. Her hands remembered home, even here. Bjorn paused in the doorway. He watched her move with confidence. Something in him eased. Outside, he split wood beneath the cold sun. Power moved through him with quiet control. Strength, without cruelty. Ciara watched from a distance. She told herself it was caution. It did not feel like caution. Bjorn felt her gaze and slowed his swing. A faint smile touched his mouth. Neither looked away first. Later, he walked beside her along the shoreline. The fjord stretched wide and silver. He showed her the land he called home. He gestured toward fields and grazing animals. Not as a master, but as someone inviting her to understand. She touched the bark of a pine tree. Rough, real, unfamiliar. This place was beginning to feel solid beneath her feet. They stood above the cliffs in open wind. Space remained between them, but the silence felt different now. Bjorn offered her a small carved token. Simple wood. Careful detail. A gift, not a claim. Her fingers brushed his as she accepted it. The contact lingered only a heartbeat. It was enough. They sat near the hearth that evening. Firelight danced across their faces. Warmth began to soften the edges between them. Ciara laughed softly, a sound that startled even her. It felt like sunlight breaking through cloud. Bjorn listened to her laughter. He had faced storms without flinching. This made him uncertain. Twilight settled over the fjord. They walked back toward the village together. Their steps matched without effort. They hung fishing nets side by side. Rope slid through their hands in quiet rhythm. Work became shared language. Their fingers brushed along the same rope knot. For a breath, neither moved. The world seemed to narrow to that single point of contact before they quietly let go. In the fields, Bjorn knelt and pressed his palm into the soil. He let the earth crumble through his fingers. This land fed his people, and he wanted her to understand it. She knelt beside him, letting the soil sift through her fingers. God, it felt colder than the earth she had known. Still, she could imagine something taking root here. He rose and pointed toward the distant mountain ridge. The wind carried his quiet explanation across the field. Those peaks marked the edge of his clan's land. At the edge of the fjord, wind lifted her cloak and hair. Cliffs dropped into the cold water below. Bjorn stood just behind her close enough to protect. As the wind strengthened, Bjorn removed his fur cloak. He settled it gently over her shoulders. The warmth wrapped around her with quiet meaning. She turned beneath the weight of the fur cloak. For a moment, she looked at him searching. The wind softened, and so did something in her. That night, she sat among the villagers near the central fire. Conversations flowed around her, less guarded than before. The space beside her no longer felt empty, it felt earned. A small child wandered over and settled beside her without hesitation. Tiny fingers tugged gently at the edge of her sleeve. She smiled and stayed still, letting the trust remain. Across the hall, Bjorn watched the quiet exchange. He saw the ease in the child's posture and the softness in Ciara's smile. For the first time, he believed she might belong here. In the training yard at dusk, Bjorn adjusted the angle of her shield. His hands hovered carefully, guiding without gripping. He treated her strength with respect. She studied her stance and lifted the shield higher. Sweat traced slightly along her temple. This was no longer just survival. Bjorn lowered his hands and studied her stance carefully. After a moment, he gave a small nod of approval. The gesture was quiet, but it carried weight between them. They sat above the fjord as the sun sank low. Golden light stretched across the water. The silence between them felt full. She studied his profile in the fading light. The wind tugged gently at his hair as he spoke softly. He no longer felt like her captor, only a man she was beginning to understand. A stray strand of hair fell across her face. Bjorn brushed it back, his fingers barely grazing her skin. The touch was brief, but it lingered. Snow fell as they walked back toward the village. Their steps matched in the quiet dusk, not strangers now, but not yet ready to name what was growing. Under the pale moon, they stood at the cliff's edge. The water shimmered below. They stood close only the beginning of something real.